What if this silence wasn't the end? What if the moment she stopped texting, stopped calling, wasn't the final chapter, but the invitation to write a better one? You sit there staring at your phone, no message, no reply. The warmth in her voice gone. The energy in her presence faded. And in that space between confusion and heartbreak, a voice inside you begins to panic. What did I do wrong? Should I fix this? Should I chase her before she disappears for good? But pause for a moment, breathe. Not everything lost is meant to be recovered, and not every silence is yours to fill. You see, most men rush into action when distance appears. They plead, they explain, they beg to be understood. But what they don't realize is, the moment they move out of alignment with themselves to regain someone else, they lose something far more sacred, self-respect. There is a different path, a slower path, a quieter path. But it leads to strength far deeper than approval. It's the path where a man stands still, not because he's given up, but because he's chosen to hold his frame, to honor his dignity, to lead with restraint, not reaction, to let the world move around him while he remains still inside, because women don't pull away without reason. And men don't collapse unless they've forgotten where their strength comes from. This isn't about playing games. It's not about pretending you don't care. It's about reclaiming something most men gave away the moment they felt unchosen, their center. So before you text her again, before you try to fix what you didn't break, before you chase something that's pulling away, watch this, because there's a man inside you, a quieter, stronger version who doesn't panic when silence arrives, who doesn't beg when space is created, who doesn't crumble when he feels disconnected. He doesn't chase closure, he becomes closure. He doesn't need to be chosen. He knows who he is, even when no one affirms it. And when a man lives like that, everything begins to shift. Not because he forced it, but because he stopped trying to be enough for someone else, and finally became enough for himself. This is where the noise ends, and the rebuilding begins. This isn't a story about getting her back, it's about getting you back. Let's begin. Number 1, don't act when emotion is in control. Before you react, pause. Before you speak, breathe. Before you move, return to yourself. There's a moment, just before you send the message, just before you hit call, just before you walk out the door, driven by urgency, tension, and the ache of wanting to fix something slipping away. That moment matters more than anything else, because what you choose in that moment will define what happens next. But most men never pause. They move with emotion. They reach, they chase, they explain, they react, because the discomfort of not doing anything feels unbearable. But here's the truth most men avoid. You're not trying to win her back. You're trying to stop yourself from feeling powerless. The panic isn't about her, it's about the silence inside you, and that's why you must not act when emotion is in control. Because if you do, you will act from a place of fear, not wisdom, of neediness, not clarity, of desperation, not discipline. A man without emotional restraint becomes unpredictable. He becomes reactive, and when that happens, he's no longer respected, he's tolerated. And no woman wants to be with a man she merely tolerates. So what should you do instead? You wait, not in passivity, not in avoidance, but in discipline, because there is strength in stillness, there is power in pausing. There is clarity that comes only when the storm inside you is allowed to pass before you move again. Ask yourself, right now, are you trying to act, or are you trying to escape what you're feeling? Most of the time, when she pulls away, what you feel is rejection, and rejection awakens every fear you've ever buried. Am I not enough? Did I mess up? Is she talking to someone else? Am I losing her? Am I losing myself? And then the need to act rises, to chase, to explain, to fight for closeness. But you cannot solve an emotional crisis with impulsive action. That's how most men lose respect, not just from her, but from themselves, because the man who reacts too soon sends this message: I need your response to feel whole again. But the man who waits, who breathes, who pauses, who grounds himself sends a different message altogether. I can feel pain and still remain composed. That is what Stoicism teaches us: not to suppress emotion, but to own it, to hold it, to sit with it until it softens. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, if you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it. And this you have the power to revoke at any moment. She pulled away. That's the fact. But your suffering, that comes from your interpretation of that fact. You think it means you're not enough. You think it means she's gone forever. You think it means you've failed. But pause. Breathe. Her silence does not define your worth. Her distance does not erase your value. Her confusion is not your cue to collapse. Your only responsibility in this moment is to return to yourself, to sit with the ache, to listen to what it's revealing, to understand that what hurts now is not her absence, but the illusion that you are incomplete without her. Because here's what's true. If you can't stand still in this silence, you are not loving her. You are clinging to her to avoid facing yourself. And love is never born from escape. It is born from presence. And presence begins when you stop trying to fix the external world and start holding your inner one together. So what should you do, practically? First, put the phone down. Don't text. Don't check her stories. Don't revisit old messages. Let the space exist. Second, sit with your emotions. Journal. Breathe. Go for a walk without distractions, not to numb yourself, but to let the storm pass through without you lashing out in the process. Third, ask yourself, what kind of man do I want to be in this moment? The kind who loses himself the moment he feels tension, or the kind who holds his frame even when everything feels uncertain? That choice, made again and again, that's what builds character. And here's what happens when you do this. You gain clarity. You stop asking, how do I get her back? And you start asking, do I even want someone who pulls away the moment? I stop performing. You stop needing her reaction to regulate your emotions. You begin to trust your center again. And when, if she comes back, you won't be the same man she walked away from. You won't be reactive. You'll be composed, measured, clear. You won't rush in to prove yourself. You'll hold space for her to come forward if she chooses to. And if she doesn't, you'll keep moving, not because you don't care, but because you learn to care for yourself first. So the next time you feel the pull to act, pause. The next time your chest tightens and you feel the urge to do something, pause. The next time your mind says, she's slipping away, remember, you cannot lose what was never truly yours. You can only lose yourself trying to hold on to it. But if you hold yourself instead, if you choose stillness over reaction, principle over panic, you won't just survive this moment. You'll rise from it. Because in the space between emotion and action, a different kind of man is born, and that is who you are becoming now. Let's keep going. Number 2, the power of silence. Sometimes the loudest message is saying nothing at all. There's a moment after the storm settles when you've chosen not to act out of emotion. You've paused, you've sat in the discomfort, you've breathed through the ache, and now there's silence, not just between you and her, but within you. It's uncomfortable at first. Every part of you wants to fill it with a text, a call, a quote she once liked, a meme that says what you can't. Anything to re-establish connection, but you must resist, because this silence is not a void, it's a mirror, and what you see in it will change everything. Most men fear silence. They see it as punishment, as rejection, as abandonment, but the man who walks this path, the one anchored in principle, learns that silence is not emptiness. It's presence. It's the space where clarity is born. It's the pause where strength is sharpened. It's the quiet where you stop performing and start listening to yourself, to your truth, to what you're actually feeling beneath the noise, because silence doesn't just affect her, it changes you. When you stop filling the space, you stop hiding from yourself. And when you stop hiding, you start becoming. You see, most men rush to speak, to explain, to defend, to prove they're still worth it, but you are not here to prove anything. You are here to hold your frame. There's an old Stoic principle. We have 2 ears and 1 mouth, so we may listen twice as much as we speak. But I'd add something deeper. Sometimes we need 0 words to say everything that needs to be said, because silence is not weakness. It's not avoidance. It's leverage. It creates tension, not to manipulate, but to allow space for truth to rise. When you stop reaching, she begins to feel the weight of your absence, not your punishment, your presence withheld. And that, my brother, is a different kind of power. Let me be clear. This isn't about ghosting. This isn't about playing hard to get. It's about understanding a simple truth. When something is always available, it loses value. But when it steps back, when it becomes rare, when it is no longer offered on demand, it is suddenly felt, deeply, viscerally, irrefutably. That's the gift of silence. She begins to notice what's no longer there. The good morning texts, the steady presence, the availability, the safety. She starts to wonder, where did he go? Why hasn't he reached out? Is he really moving on? And in those questions, something shifts. Not in you, in her. Because now, you are no longer the man chasing. You are the man she has to reevaluate, to reconsider, to miss. And that's not manipulation. That's nature. Think of it like this. You don't crave oxygen when it's all around you. You crave it the moment it disappears. Silence is your oxygen. Withdraw it calmly, consciously, respectfully, and let her come up for breath. Let her remember who you were before you became too predictable, too easy, too emotionally available without requirement. And now, let's talk about you, because silence isn't just for her. It's for you too. This is the space where you refocus, where you rebuild, where you ask the real questions. Was I showing up as a man I'm proud of? Was I emotionally dependent or emotionally present? Was I truly leading or following her lead while pretending to be in control? This is your pause, your reset, your fortress. Let the silence teach you. Let it guide you back to your center. Let it strip away the noise of performance and bring you home to your own voice. Because when she reaches out, if she does, the man who responds will not be the same man who was left behind. You will be more composed, more clear, more you. And if she doesn't reach out, That silence will not be wasted. It will have forged something sacred within you, because no man ever lost himself in silence, only in noise. So the next time your instincts scream at you to break the quiet, to just check in, to just make sure she's okay, to just send one more message to keep the connection alive, pause and remember. She knows how to reach you. You've been there. Now it's your time to be here with yourself. This is not about power over her. It's about power over you. And when you master that, you become unshakable, a man who is not reactive, not impulsive, not needy, but present, centered, silent, still. And that kind of man, he doesn't beg to be heard. He doesn't rush to be seen. He doesn't shout to prove value. He simply exists, and the world adjusts to feel him. That is the power of silence. And now you hold it. Let's move forward. Number 3, they miss you when you stop being available. Presence creates comfort. Absence creates clarity. There's a moment you don't see when she opens her phone, scrolls through your thread, and realizes something has changed. Not because you said anything dramatic, not because you tried to prove a point, but because the man who was always there simply isn't. And suddenly, your silence feels louder than every word you ever said. Let me say this clearly. Most men overestimate the power of showing up and underestimate the power of disappearing. It's easy to be present, easy to text good morning, easy to ask how she's doing, to offer your time, your energy, your consistency. And yes, those things matter, but only when they are earned. Because here's a truth that cuts deeper than most are willing to admit. What is always available becomes invisible. When your attention is constant, it's expected. When your presence is unconditional, it's assumed. And when you make yourself emotionally accessible at all times, you become part of the background, not because you've done something wrong, but because she no longer has to reach for you. You've already given everything, and what's been given too easily is rarely valued deeply. This isn't a game. This is human nature. We only begin to value what we once took for granted, the moment it's no longer there. So when you stop being available, you don't just create distance, you create mystery. And mystery is the birthplace of desire. She starts wondering, where did he go? Why isn't he reacting? Why hasn't he checked in? And those questions aren't about curiosity. They're about influence. You're no longer a certainty. You become a variable. And variables demand attention. She might not respond right away. She might not even show it. But internally, something has shifted. You've reclaimed energetic control. Because when you were always available, she never had to evaluate your worth. But now that you've pulled back, she must. And here's where the shift happens, not in her behavior, but in her perception. Before, you were the man who showed up. Now you're the man she has to wonder about, and wonder leads to re-evaluation. But let's go deeper. Why does absence have this kind of impact? Because absence creates scarcity, and scarcity psychologically equals value. Think of it like this. You drink water every day. It's always there. You don't think about it. But if water disappeared for 24 hours, if suddenly it was gone, you'd panic. You'd crave it. You'd do anything to get it back. That's the psychology at play. Your energy, your presence, your support is the water. And when you pull it away, not to punish but to preserve, you remind her, you are not unlimited. You are a man with direction, a man with standards, a man who doesn't pour endlessly into someone who's stopped holding the cup. That's not cruelty. That's self-respect. And let's be honest, if she never had to wonder where you were, she never had a reason to ask herself how much you mattered. But now she feels it. Not in grand moments, but in the quiet ones. When she's scrolling and your name doesn't appear. When she posts something and there's no reaction. When she checks her phone at midnight and it's still blank. And slowly the emotional tables begin to turn. But this only works when your absence is genuine. You can't fake it. You can't disappear hoping she notices while still orbiting her life from the shadows. You can't say I'm done and still stalk her stories every day. True absence is rooted in detachment, in acceptance, in the quiet knowing that your worth does not require constant expression. When you withdraw with peace, not pettiness, you become powerful. Because you're no longer reacting, you're responding, not to her, but to your own growth. And here's the secret most men don't realize. If she comes back, she won't be coming back to the same man. She'll be coming back to someone who doesn't need her to validate his worth. And if she doesn't come back, you'll still win. Because you'll be left with someone stronger, someone clearer, someone who doesn't give himself away to be seen. That someone is you. So the next time you feel tempted to send that message to remind her you're still here, pause. Ask yourself, am I doing this from alignment or from anxiety? Is this message an extension of my power or a symptom of my fear? Because the man who acts from fear will always be chasing, but the man who waits in discipline becomes the one who is chased. That's the paradox. You're not punishing her with your absence. You're protecting your value. And when you do that, everything begins to shift. Not because you tried to make her miss you, but because you finally stopped making yourself impossible to lose. Number 4, match her distance with your discipline. When she pulls back, don't react with emotion. Respond with composure. You feel it, that subtle shift. The energy changes, barely noticeable to the outside world, but undeniable to you. She takes longer to reply. Her voice lacks warmth. The effortless flow between you is now interrupted by pauses, by silence, by that unmistakable distance that wasn't there before, and your instincts scream, do something, say something. Close the gap before it widens, fix it before it's too late. Everything in you wants to lean in. But this is the moment most men fall. Because when she pulls back, the average man overcompensates. He gives more, tries harder, explains faster. Not because he's certain, but because he's scared. And that fear, no matter how dressed up in kindness or romance, never creates attraction. It dissolves it. So what do? You match her distance, not with coldness, not with bitterness, but with discipline. You hold your position, not because you're playing a game, but because you refuse to lose yourself trying to keep someone else close. You see, emotional control is not about pretending you're unaffected. It's about respecting your own energy enough not to give it away to someone who's unsure whether they want it. This is what makes men forgettable, not the silence from the woman, but the emotional unraveling that follows. And this is where you rise. You rise by becoming still. You rise by choosing neutrality over neediness. You rise by realizing that not every cold wind deserves a reaction. Some things are meant to pass. Others are meant to test your footing. So let her pull back. Let her take space. Let her wonder if you noticed. Because what makes you different is not how fast you chase, but how deeply you trust your own center. When everything around you shifts, You don't need to ask her, "Are we okay?" You don't need to text again because she didn't respond fast enough. You don't need to remind her you're there. She knows, and your silence, your restraint, your stillness. It speaks louder than any message ever could, because in that, stillness is the message she didn't expect. I don't move unless it's aligned with who I am. That is power, not forceful, not arrogant, but grounded. This is where Stoicism lives, not in denial of emotion, but in mastery over your response to it. Most men are driven by their feelings. They react the moment discomfort arises. They fill the silence with apologies, affirmations, questions, but you sit with the silence. You let it echo, you let it teach, and the longer you stay rooted, the clearer everything becomes. Because here's the truth. If her distance is temporary, she will return. And when she does, she'll return to a man who didn't break his own frame, trying to accommodate her absence. But if her distance is permanent, then your discipline has saved you from chasing what was already gone. Either way, you win, because you stayed in integrity with yourself. Let that sink in. You don't need to act in order to prove your worth. Your stillness is proof enough. You don't need to explain your value. Your energy speaks it in every moment you choose presence over panic. So the next time she pulls away, don't panic, don't plead, don't predict. Observe. Let her show you who she is when you stop performing. Let the silence stretch long enough for her to feel its weight. And in that space, let your strength do what words cannot. Let her feel the absence of your warmth. Let her question the certainty of your pursuit. Let her wonder, because if she has to wonder, you are no longer predictable. And what is no longer predictable becomes valuable again. But above all, let this distance be the mirror where you meet yourself. Ask yourself, am I reacting because I feel unworthy? Or am I responding from a place of grounded self-respect? Am I trying to control the outcome? Or am I letting things unfold, trusting that what's meant for me won't need to be chased? That's what this is about, not her, not the messages, not the rhythm of her replies, but your response, your breath, your stillness, your unshakable discipline in the face of ambiguity, because the men who are remembered are not the ones who tried the hardest. They're the ones who remained themselves when everything told them to become someone else. So let the world flinch, let her test the waters, let the distance speak. And you? Match it, not with fear, but with quiet strength. Because the man who can match her distance without losing his center is the man she won't forget. Let's move forward. Number 5, you don't need her to return. You just need to return to yourself. Letting go is not losing. It's remembering that your peace was never hers to hold. There's a truth most men avoid, not because they can't handle it, but because it asks them to stop chasing what was never in their control. And that truth is this: she doesn't need to come back. Not for you to heal, not for you to grow, not for you to move forward with strength and clarity, because your wholeness was never supposed to depend on her presence. It was supposed to rest in your return to yourself. But we forget that. We forget that before we met her, before the late nights, the quiet smiles, the laughter that felt like forever, we were already enough. Maybe not perfect, maybe not complete, but whole in our becoming. And then we started giving away pieces of ourselves, not out of love, but out of fear. Fear that if we didn't overextend, we'd lose her. Fear that if we didn't chase, we'd be forgotten. Fear that if we stopped showing up first, we'd disappear from her world altogether. But here's the cost. In trying to hold on to her, we loosened our grip on ourselves. And now, she's gone. Or maybe she's still half there but cold, distant, emotionally absent, and you're sitting in that space, wondering if she'll come back. But brother, hear this clearly. You don't need her to come back. What you need is to return to the man you were before you started begging for breadcrumbs. To return to the man who didn't need reassurance to feel valuable. To the man who didn't try to fix everything just to be chosen, because you were never meant to be someone's second choice. You were meant to be your own first commitment. This doesn't mean you don't care. This doesn't mean you shut off your heart. It means you stop outsourcing your worth to someone else's decision. Because when you place your healing in her hands, you've already given away your power. And Stoicism teaches us one thing above all: what is outside of your control does not belong to you. Her return, outside your control. Her feelings, outside your control. Her regret, her awakening, her apology. If it ever comes, all of it lives beyond your reach. But your response, that's yours. Your ability to sit in the pain and not move. To feel the sting of absence and not chase it. To grieve the hope you had without abandoning the man you are. That's yours. And that's freedom. Because when a man no longer needs her to return in order to feel complete, he becomes powerful in a way most never reach. He becomes sovereign, self-led, rooted in something unshakable. You see, most men view letting go as defeat. They think walking away means they lost. But you don't lose by letting go. You lose by holding on to something that no longer holds you. When you stop waiting for her, you start making room for something far more important: your evolution. You begin to reclaim the time you gave away, the energy you leaked through overthinking, the emotional weight you carried for both of you, and slowly, silently you start to rise. Not in a rush, not in revenge, but in quiet, consistent steps back to your center. Maybe she sees it, maybe she doesn't. It no longer matters, because you're no longer living to be noticed. You're living to be whole. Let that be your turning point. Let this be the moment you stop asking, will she come back? And start asking, what is calling me forward? The truth is, if she returns, it won't be to the same man she left behind. It'll be to a man who no longer needs her to validate his worth. And if she doesn't, you haven't lost. You've been refined. She didn't reject you. She redirected you back to your path, back to your principles, back to the man who never needed to be chosen to know he had value. So let her go, not with bitterness, not with sarcasm, but with reverence, because her exit taught you something no book, no quote, no mentor ever could: that the man who stands alone without collapsing is the man who will never beg to be held again. That's not heartbreak, that's ascension. And it doesn't happen when she comes back, it happens when you do. So today, don't ask whether she'll return. Ask yourself, will I? Will you return to your breath, to your focus, to your vision, to your discipline, to your quiet certainty that no matter who stays or who leaves, you remain? Because that man, he doesn't wait to be chosen. He walks in the direction of his own becoming, and one day someone will meet him there, not because he needed her to, but because he had already arrived. Let's keep going. Number 6. When you stop chasing, she starts looking back. When you no longer orbit her world, she begins to feel its silence. There's a pattern that repeats itself again and again. A woman pulls away, slowly at first. She becomes colder, shorter, less invested. And the man, he senses it. He feels it in the pauses between replies, in the sudden change of tone, in the warmth that slowly fades from her words. And what does he do? He chases, he sends more messages, longer messages. He explains, he apologizes, he proves. Not because he did something wrong, but because he's trying to hold on to something that's slipping through his hands. And with every reach, he loses more ground. Not because his intentions aren't genuine, but because he's giving too much of himself to someone who's no longer listening. But here's the secret that few men ever learn. The moment you stop chasing, everything begins to shift. Not immediately, not dramatically, but quietly, in places you can't see. Because when a man who once gave everything, his time, his energy, his devotion, suddenly goes quiet, she feels it, not with her mind, but with something deeper, something primal, something instinctive. It starts small. She checks her phone, expecting his name to appear. It doesn't. She posts something, half hoping for his like, his comment, his attention. Silence. She wonders, just for a second, did he see this? But that second grows, because for the first time in a long time, he's no longer predictable. He's no longer guaranteed. He's no longer orbiting her world. And now, she feels the space he used to fill. And that space? It's louder than any message he could have sent, because now she's the one unsure. She's the one wondering. She's the one feeling the tension of not knowing what he's thinking, what he's doing, whether he's moved on. And this isn't manipulation. It's not about playing games. It's about restoring balance, because for too long he was giving without receiving, showing up without invitation, trying to save something she wasn't trying to lose. And now, by stepping back, not out of revenge, but out of self-respect, he's created space for truth to emerge, because the truth always lives in the absence. It's easy to take something for granted when it's always there. It's easy to stop appreciating someone who never steps away. But when you disappear from someone's daily rhythm, when your voice no longer fills the gaps, when your energy is reclaimed instead of given freely, that's when they start to see clearly, because distance sharpens what closeness can sometimes blur. It's only in your silence that she starts to ask, was I wrong? Did I misjudge him? Did I lose something I didn't know I valued? And those questions, they carry more weight than anything you could have said. You see, most men try to convince her with words. They write paragraphs. They pour out their feelings. They lay everything bare, hoping that vulnerability will save them. But you don't need to speak to be understood. You don't need to explain to be respected. Sometimes the absence of your energy delivers the message she was never willing to hear from your lips, because now you're no longer accessible. You're no longer easy to reach. You become a question mark in her mind, and curiosity is the beginning of re-evaluation. But here's the most powerful part. By the time she starts to look back, you're no longer the man she remembers. You're calmer, clearer, stronger. No longer seeking her validation to feel like a man, no longer needing her presence to justify your worth. She might reach out, she might test the waters, she might even apologize. And whether you accept her back or not is no longer the point. The point is, you're no longer waiting. You're no longer placing your future in someone else's hands. You've returned to your own path. And now, she's the one watching from the distance you used to occupy. That's the shift. That's the moment everything turns, not because you became cold, but because you became so full within yourself that you no longer needed her to complete you. And the man who no longer needs her is the only one she'll truly want again. But by the time she realizes that you've changed, you're not acting from emptiness. You're living from purpose. You're not waiting by the phone. You're moving forward with clarity, with focus, with your own quiet fire, and maybe she catches up. Or maybe she watches you walk away. Either way, you're not chasing anymore. Because when a man stops chasing a woman and starts chasing his own growth, she starts looking back, and he never does. Let's keep going. Number 7, you don't win by being chosen. You win by not needing to be. True power begins the moment you stop needing to be picked. There's a subtle lie men have been fed their whole lives. A soft, dangerous whisper that says, you're only worthy if she chooses you. So we grow up performing, striving, trying to be the funniest, the strongest, the most available. We try to look right, sound right, behave right, all to become the one she'll eventually choose. And when she doesn't, when she walks away, becomes cold, pulls back, we feel not just rejected but erased because deep down we've tied our identity to being chosen. We think, if she doesn't want me, maybe I'm not enough. Maybe I need to change. Maybe I need to try harder. But here's the truth. Stoicism teaches us a truth that breaks illusions and rebuilds men from the inside out. You never needed to be chosen, not to be whole, not to be powerful, not to be respected, because real value is not determined by who accepts you. It's revealed by who you become, even when no one is watching. You win, not when someone finally sees your worth, but when their perception no longer dictates it. The moment you let go of needing her to pick you is the moment you pick yourself. And that choice, it's freedom, because now you stop negotiating your standards just to be kept. You stop molding yourself into someone else's fantasy. You stop waiting for approval that may never come. Instead, you begin to ask real questions. What do I value? What kind of man do I want to be when no one is clapping? What am I willing to walk away from just to keep my peace intact? And from those questions, you start to see differently. You start to see that being chosen is not the win. Being aligned is aligned with your truth, your purpose, your self-respect, because the moment you stop living for someone else's recognition, you become unshakable. Think about it. The man who needs to be picked will always bend. He will shrink to fit. He will compromise his voice to keep her close. And in doing so, he trades power for proximity. But the man who no longer needs the trophy, who understands that his presence is its own reward, that man becomes rare. And in a world of men who chase validation, a rare man is irresistible. Not because he plays hard to get, but because he lives hard to move. She can't manipulate him, can't guilt him, can't confuse him with half love or conditional affection, because he knows something most men don't, that losing someone who didn't truly value you is not loss. It's liberation. And when she realizes that, when she sees that her absence didn't break you, but built you, that's when the dynamic shifts. She begins to feel something unfamiliar, not the attention she used to receive, not the comfort of being chased, but the unfamiliar weight of knowing she's no longer needed, and what she once assumed would always be there has now become a door that's no longer open. But by then, you're not waiting at that door anymore. You've moved, grown, ascended, not because of her, but because of you. That's the essence of self-mastery. You don't win by convincing someone to stay. You win by becoming someone who doesn't need convincing in the first place. You don't measure your worth by who comes or who leaves. You measure it by how little your peace depends on either. And now You stand at the end of this journey, not with closure from her, but with completion within yourself. You've learned to hold still when everything told you to chase. You've learned to be silent when noise begged for reaction. You've learned to retreat from chaos, not to run, but to regroup. You've become the man who doesn't demand to be chosen, because he already knows who he is, and if she sees it, good. If she doesn't, still good, because her vision was never the source of your value, only the mirror that once reflected your doubt. But now, you don't look in mirrors to see who you are, so walk forward, not to prove anything, not to punish anyone, but because your path is no longer waiting for permission. And remember, you win when you stop needing to, because that man, the one who chose himself when no one else did, he's not just powerful, he's unforgettable, and above all, he's free. Final reflection. You didn't lose her. You found yourself. You began this journey with silence, not hers, yours. Not the absence of sound, but the absence of clarity. The questions were loud, the pain louder, and the urge to act deafening, but instead of chasing, you paused. Instead of performing, you listened. And in that pause, something began to shift. You met the version of yourself you'd forgotten. The one who doesn't rush, the one who doesn't beg, the one who, even when hurt, chooses stillness over surrender. Because every lesson you've walked through wasn't about her. It was about you, rebuilding your frame, reclaiming your energy, relearning the language of inner leadership. You learned to hold your ground when emotion tried to pull you forward, to sit inside the ache and let it soften rather than solve it with noise. You saw the quiet power of silence, not as punishment, but as presence. Not as manipulation, but as discipline. You learned that your absence has value, that sometimes stepping back says more than any paragraph ever could. And when you stopped being easily available, you stopped being easily forgotten. You began to match energy with maturity, not emotion. You didn't shrink, you didn't lash out, you simply stood taller by standing still. And that changed everything. You stopped needing her to come back, and in doing so, you came back to yourself. You no longer asked, will she reach out? You started asking, will I keep growing regardless? You discovered that when a man stops chasing what's leaving and starts chasing who he's meant to become, she begins to look back. But you, Guy, you've already moved forward, and now here you are, not waiting, not wondering, not watching the door, but walking your path, one step at a time, no longer searching for permission, no longer adjusting your value based on her recognition. You've stopped needing to be chosen, because you've chosen you. You've chosen your peace over chaos, your clarity over comfort, your direction over distraction. That's what this was always about. Not a girl, not a text, not a return, but a return to your center. And now you carry something most men never reach, a sense of grounded, unshakable self-trust. The kind that doesn't shout, the kind that doesn't prove, the kind that makes a woman pause. Not because you demanded her attention, but because you no longer needed it. You've become the man who holds his silence with strength, who sets boundaries with grace, who walks forward without looking back unless he chooses to. So now, as this journey closes, don't ask what happens next with her. Ask what happens next within you, because a man who has reclaimed his inner world is a man who cannot be forgotten in any world, and that is how you win without needing to.